Oh, Bretto.
What's up, MP?
Damo just called.
Yeah?
He thinks there's going to be 100,000 people at the Wellness Summit.
Oh, again?
He thinks we're bigger than Michael Jackson, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles all put together.
Damien Christoph has gone completely mad.
Did you know he's made 8 tons of forage?
What?
And now he wants you and I to help him get rid of it.
Oh, Damo.
So look, being the good friends that we are, we've asked him.
You mean forced?
Well, we've kind of twisted his arm to make him literally give his forage away to 100 lucky Wellness Summit attendees.
So if you're ready to enrol for our signature 2 days of inspiration, education and empowerment...
And entertainment.
What do you mean, MP?
Well, Australian Idol winner Wes Carr makes his Wellness Summit debut this year, Bretto.
Wes Carr, you'll be guilty!
So if you're ready to be entertained, head on over to thewellnesssummit.com.
And get 4 value bags of forage muesli or 1 bag each of paleo, muesli, bircher and porridge when you register.
Now, all you need to do is register for this 2-for-1 special, bring a buddy, bring a friend, bring a family member or a colleague.
And then choose your forage selection, 4 muesli or 4 assorted, and get 4 bags per attendee. That's 8 bags per double pass.
That's almost $250 of forage for free when you register for the Wellness Summit on August 25-26 at the Collingwood Town Hall in Melbourne.
That's 150 serves of breakfast. Almost 6 months of breakfast just for registering for the Wellness Summit.
Well, it's first in, best dressed. These 100 tickets are only available until June 18 or until sold out.
All the details of this special offer, all the topics, featured speakers and more are over at thewellnesssummit.com.
Thanks for making 8 tons of forage, Damo.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Mara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And we're together! I know! Shut the front door!
In the same room.
We are. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
This would have to be our first podcast in the same room together in what? 2 years, 3 years, easily?
It's been a long time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the last podcast we did together, we were in New Zealand with all of our hikers.
Oh, yeah, we were too.
And before that, it's been forever.
It's
I don't
so
even
nice.
remember.
So good.
Oh, it's the bomb. So we have an amazing guest joining us today, and it's kind of, it's all very purposeful, that we've got our gorgeous Davinia joining us today. Davinia Glendenning is joining us. She's a psychologist specializing in neuroscience, which, is totes up my alley. So I'm really excited about having today's conversation. But I think it's actually quite fitting that, we're all in the room together. We've got a neuroscientist on the other end of the call, couple of nutters over this side, and someone that can keep it all together for us on the other side. So, Davinia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I don't know if I can keep it together on this side, but hey, I'll try.
We were just commenting for all of our listeners. We were just commenting that we're all blonde and all quite gorgeous. Just
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite fabulous. So we may all be led astray today. Let's just put it out there as a possibility, shall we?
Definitely. Well, I hope I could bring some new information anyway. Some of the things I might say might fill the gaps for some people, or it might be completely new, but either way, I'm just excited to be able to share what I love.
And we're really, really grateful to have you on the show. So, Cindy, you met Davinia in Newcastle?
It was Newcastle, that we met. And what happens is that I'll do my talk, and there was well over 100 and something people in Newcastle, and I'll do my talk, and then there'll be people that stop to have a chat. And Davinia's friend actually wanted to ask a question, and I don't know, I was quite taken with your friend, with what she had been through and with what she was doing in her life. And then, I don't know, I asked you something, and then I realized that you would be wonderful for our show, and especially with Karen Smith, because more often than not we do food and health and diet. We don't often do, the stuff that you guys talk about all the time, the neuroscience and the resilience and all of that. And I thought that it would be really nice for Karen to be the lead in this as opposed to Kimmy and I.
Don't worry, I get my 20 cents in.
Yeah.
She does.
So, Davinia, could you tell us, I'm really curious because Cindy has been really excited about this interview.
Oh.
Could you give us a little background as to who you are and how you came to being here today?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, I'm excited too, so that's really nice. How did I came to be here today? Well, my background is really that I've just been working as a psychologist now for about 14 years, and over that time I've just slowly refined, I guess, my field and what I like doing. And about 8 years ago, I ended up being in a workshop with who was my mentor, currently my mentor, and he started talking about how the neuroplasticity basically, and how as psychologists we can help aid our clients to build these positive neural networks. And really for me, for the first time, I really felt like I was getting some real gutsy information on how I could really help other people and not just sit in a room and talk about cognitive changes and how they can change their thinking, but really helping empower them and to understand how their brain does change and how they can play a role in changing it. But I think the vital piece for me was, up until really that point, I really believed I was who I was and I couldn't do a lot to change my capacity. So it was a really exciting moment in all fronts for me, that I really walked out of that workshop feeling so relieved that I could actually make a difference not only in my client's life, but it really started with me. And so I started on a really specific resilience journey in my world, really mapping out how I wanted my life to look and really taking one step at a time to build these healthy neural pathways and go on my own journey. And over that time, I just continued to work with this mentor of mine who was a neuroscientist, and have just fallen into some really wonderful, exciting projects, and now travel Australia and New Zealand and teach psychologists about the resilience, neuroscience of resilience, and work as a private psychologist and do and a few other little things as well. But I just love it. I just love it. I love it because I feel so passionate and so excited that as I'm working with the individuals and my clients, with other psychologists, I'm learning and growing myself at the same time. So all my worlds really are just continually merged together, and I feel really grateful actually that I have fallen into an occupation and a career and a life that I get to continually adapt and grow. It's really exciting.
Davinia, you mentioned learning how to create positive neural pathways.
Mm.
And I think you've really hit a nail on the head there, in that you kind of place yourself at the center of the responsibility in terms of being able to create healthy neural pathways for yourself. Whereas I think if you put the question out to general society, most of them would kind of feel a little bit subject to their own experiences, their upbringing, the whole nature versus nurture question. A lot of people, if they don't do the inner inquiry, they don't actually recognize that they're living through their own conditioning, and an alternative is possible. And I think, to clarify for our listeners, what do you mean when you say create a positive neural pathway? I mean, how does Bill and Betty Barbecue do that?
Yeah, sure. I like it.
I love Bill and Betty Barbecue. They're my neighbours.
So really in a number of ways. I mean, that's the amazing thing about our brain. Our brain changes through any type of sensory information. So that can be internal information, that can be external information. So as soon as we start thinking about things, or we start visualizing things, or experiencing them in any way, it starts to shape our brain. Now, our brain is continually evolving and adapting and changing, regardless of whether we're aware of it or play a part in it or not. Where it's helpful to know, though, is that your brain is continually making new pathways, and it's also continually breaking down pathways that we don't use anymore. So from a practical point of view, if we're looking at how we can build positive neural pathways, we're doing that initial step that you were just talking about, which is self-awareness. What's going on in my life, and what is it that I'm wanting to change, and literally what would be the next step towards the one thing that I want to start working towards. So the brain likes to have really specific small steps of change. It doesn't like big astronomical visions that we have to leap and take these massive leaps of judgment. We need little tiny steps of change that our brain goes, okay, so this is a little bit uncomfortable, it's a little bit uncertain, but I know that I've got the resources or the support or the understanding of how I'm going to get to that step. And then you get to that step and you start to feel a little bit more comfortable in that step. An example might be, if you were going to start exercising, the good old sporting analogy, they're always nice, is if you wanted to start going to the gym, but you're really fearful of getting fit, or you didn't know if you could financially afford it. How, as a mother, I work with a lot of mums. How can I get out of the house? What will I wear, etc., etc. It's really looking at, look, I want to get to the gym 1 time a week. The next step for me would be having a conversation with my family. And that conversation would be around my desire and how we're going to enable this as a family, and how do I get that, not necessarily the support, but how do I make sure that I've got the time slot in my timetable to do that. And then once that's done, it's looking at the next step. So when's the next available day that I can do it, etc., etc. So building positive neural pathways, it can mean, gosh, it's endless. It's really about deciding what it is that you want to achieve and just actively shuffling forward towards whatever that is. Is that specific enough?
Very.
Here's a question.
I was listening to you talking like that, Davinia, and I realised I don't think like that.
Aha.
Is that a problem?
How do you think?
If I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the gym. It's a decision.
Yes.
But that's because it's already a neural pathway in there.
That's right.
That's what I want to know.
Yes,
But even still, if I'm going to do, what I would love to know is if I want to say I want to do a detox.
Yep.
Right? And I wanted to actually go and do something like that, then that might take a little bit more thought. But for me, it's very, I'm going to do that. I'm starting I'm going to start tomorrow. Yeah. So I kind of go, I'm all or nothing. Is that typical, or is that just unusual?
No, I think as human beings, the most amazing thing about us is every single one of us are different, and all of our lives present differently, and what we enjoy is different, and what we find easy and enjoyable is different. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you already have some really resilient pathways in place, particularly from what you're saying around health. So similar to me, like, health is not something that I have to consider. Health is just something that I do, and it's to me, it's sort of a tick on the board all the time. That's done. I don't need to put my energy there. But when it comes to doing my accounts and financially being on top of things like that, I will avoid it till the cows come home. I hate it. I detest it. I've really got to put systems in place that remind me to do it. I've got to force myself to look at those figures, and that area for me isn't set up well because I haven't set it up well. I haven't enhanced the. I haven't got the systems in well enough that I enjoy it, or not that I might enjoy it, but that it's seamless. So when it comes to health and the fact that you enjoy it and you repeat it and you engage in it so easily says to me that you do gain something from it.
Davinia, can I just clarify something here that might kind of give a bit of direction on this too? There's a distinction between a neural pathway that has been laid down for, many years, obviously.
Yeah.
Wires really well together, and obviously for somebody like Kimmy, we'll use you as an example.
Go on, because I know you're going to take this somewhere you shouldn't.
Here's what I prepared. Exhibit A, Judge. But she's got amazing neural pathways laid down around her own self-discipline.
Yeah.
She comes from a very athletic background, and so discipline for her in whatever she sets her mind to do. Like if she tells herself she's doing something, she's doing it, and it's not really whether it's running or the gym or her book work as much as she would hate to have to do that, but she'll still do it because she's got the neural pathway around discipline. Yeah. Perhaps a distinction is willpower, and I wonder if when it comes to the contrast of willpower versus neural pathway, willpower is probably the beginning of where a person would lay down a new neural pathway, but you really can't go anywhere with willpower unless interest is present.
Yeah, and I mean there's a lot in that particular thing that you're saying, because the reality is willpower is sort of one of these phenomena that have expanded in its notoriety to some degree. And what willpower really is in neurological terms is what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is BDNF. It's our brain steroid, which is the chemical that allows neurogenesis. So our synapses, our cells, new neural pathways to be formed, and BDNF runs out. So there's only a certain amount that we have per day. Now, there's some things that can grow and produce this BDNF and help you support this BDNF, and those three things happen to be sleep, exercise, and movement, I like to say, sleep, movement, and nutrition. So willpower is really saying that you have confidently used your brain resources throughout the day. Now, where this becomes complicated is that's really saying that you're a resilient person, and that you've been able to adequately dictate where you need to put your energy throughout the day, so that it's not zapped all in one place, but you've been able to spread out your brain resources throughout the day so that you have the capacity to continually delegate it to and dedicate it to new tasks. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And I'm interested in what I'm fascinated in now, though, is, let's say if I wanted to create and do, okay, I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
Cindy is trying to always get me into the ocean to swim. Now, is this because I don't want to do it, or could I create enough willpower that would create a new brain drive neurotropic factor where it would change? Can you change that?
Yeah, there's lots of okay, let me try and unpack that question. So in order for you to start a new behaviour like going into the ocean, the main thing that we need to do, this brings in, I hope I'm not making this too complex, because we're now going into another brain chemical, which you probably heard of is dopamine. Have you ladies heard of our beautiful dopamine chemical?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So dopamine's our pleasure chemical. Now, people tend to think that what happens is when we feel pleasure, dopamine is produced in our brain, and what that chemical purpose is for our brain to say, oh, that felt good, so I'm now motivated to repeat this process. Now, when we repeat processes, that's when we really lay down new neural pathways and they become strengthened over time. So dopamine is our motivating chemical to continue to repeat things over and over and over again so we can actually form new habits and behavioural systems. Now, so when you're starting to go into the ocean and you don't really like
it.
That's harsh.
She hates it, Davinia.
You hate it. And that's it. And this is the thing. So I would sit with you and discuss the hate first to find out where the hate comes from, what it's associated with. So do you have a fear, like do you have a phobia around going to the ocean? Did something happen? All of those things I'd want to know first.
Exactly. And often I think, I honestly believe with you, and I'm agreeing with you, that things like that start out as a fear. You know, I thought my sister was going to drown one day and I had to save her in a big tyre, and I've been dumped by waves at Mooloolaba Beach when Cindy told me it was incredibly safe. She's also told me to swim with her. I got dumped at Mooloolaba.
I can't see it.
You get dumped. You do get dumped.
They're bad.
They're bad. They're dumpers. And then one day she told me that they saw a shark while they were out there swimming.
Oh, yeah, that's
and she said, don't worry about it because it was down the back. And I thought, well, how does a shark know that you're at the back and where I would be? Where I would be.
Yeah, that's scary. I have to say, I have a big fear. I grew up with the ocean too, and I do have a big fear of the sharks swimming by me one day and taking me out, even though I know it's low probability. But given that too, though, what I didn't say with the dopamine was that if even just because we feel pleasure doesn't mean it's helpful for us. So, for example, when you were swimming in the ocean when you were younger and you saw your sister nearly drown, is that right? Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was getting in trouble in the ocean. And then the next time you went to the ocean and you felt fear and anxiety about going in and you thought, oh, you know what, I don't think I really need to swim in the ocean anymore. And you hopped out, you would have felt a sense of relief, and that panic and that anxiety would have dissipated a little bit. Now, what happens then is your brain also releases dopamine because you're feeling a sense of pleasure from avoiding the activity. Yeah. So dopamine isn't just important in setting up good new habits, it's also part to play in any habit formation that we have and any associations that we have. So each time you avoided the ocean or you went to get in and then you got out and you got that relief again and you drove away and thought, oh my God, I'm never going back to the ocean. The dopamine is just continuing to teach our brain that that activity isn't something that I feel safe doing, so I don't need to repeat that anymore. So for you to go back to the ocean and start swimming again, it would be a really small, minute desensitization program, essentially, where you're literally just getting to the sand and learning to be mindful and meditate on the sand and learning to feel the sand, and then you just be slowly, gradually going into the ocean, but each time making sure that we pair dopamine production with each of those steps, so your brain is building new neural pathways of what we call in psych terms of approach behaviours, which means that you're actually actively putting in place helpful behaviours that will help you become a resilient human being, not avoidance behaviours, which is running away from things that are scary and not necessarily harmful to you, but you've learnt to perceive them in that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually find that fascinating because you've just nailed it on the head. You know, for me, it's the most pleasurable thing that I do in my life every single morning, and I have this routine. But moving on from the swimming, if it's okay if I ask a question.
Yes, please.
With one of the programs that I have on the 4-phase fat loss, it's called on changing habits. It's called the 4-phase fat loss. People do really well on it because it's discipline. They know that they've got to do it. They do it for a period of time. But this is the comments I always hear from people. I did really well, Cindy. I lost all the weight. I felt better. I was feeling amazing. And then life got in the way. So I was stressed at work. My kids were giving me whatever. I couldn't, life got in the way. They all say it. And I'm like going, how do we help people make these changes for good in their life? And I was getting a crux of it with the water and Kimmy, but this to me is this causes failure for people to stay doing the right things, such as movement and exercise and
Meditation.
eating and meditation and setting up your day well, or whatever it is that you have to do. What does it take to make somebody change? I guess it's step by step, but yeah.
Yeah, you keep going.
Sorry, Davinia, I was just saying to Cindy, is there emotional eating caught up in that as well? Like people can be disciplined for a certain period of time, but then, the emotional triggers come back and then they're using food to comfort themselves.
Yeah. And that's, the reality who knows? Like, the reality is, who knows what's going on there? It could be a multitude of factors that are triggering them, but essentially what it sounds like is happening is they're siloing their health process. And what I mean by that is, in that particular instance, they've been able to block out the time frame of that program, and they've put in the structure around that protein and the routines of how they're going to fulfill this 8-week program, and they've been able to prioritise it in that time frame. But as soon as they finish that time frame, that silo of discipline is removed, and they're no longer capable of integrating those habits into their lifestyle. And it's really what I talk about on a day-to-day basis with my clients about being resilient. Isn't about being resilient as a parent. It isn't about being resilient as a community member or a career person at work. To be resilient means that you have to be able to implement the systems of building these new neural pathways, of creating brain health in every area of your life. And if we just create it in one area of our life, it doesn't necessarily mean that our brain has the capacity to integrate it across everything, although it's helpful to start in one area and then generalize and expand on that. But if people think that the change and the situation has to occur under those specific rules, they then sort of self-sabotage to think that unless those parameters are there, they can no longer fulfill the requirements. Does that make any sense at all, Cindy?
Oh, most definitely. And
good.
Karen often says this. She talks, like you call it, the silo.
Yeah.
She puts a wall on either side of you, so nothing happened before and nothing's happened after.
Yeah.
You're just in that wall of the silo. And I quite like the silo. At first, I wasn't quite sure what you were saying, and Karen.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I do that a lot.
You were so
I
right.
use lots of words that I know exactly what I'm talking about, and no one else does.
I think that goes for all of us. Yes. I heard Dr. Libby on the weekend speaking to Davinia, and she talked about this, where you go and make a food choice that isn't right for you, it is based on an occurrence that would have occurred in your childhood that you now constantly need to refeed or refuel or comfort. And it's usually based around comfort, and it's triggered by fear. That was her assumption on anything to do with doing something that sabotaged your health and wellness. How would you describe that?
Yeah, I would describe emotional eating. Is that what you're saying? Talking about emotional eating specifically?
Because of people
going to a particular food, I guess.
Well, she was talking about how people, like Cindy just said, you can be eating really well, you can be doing really well, and then for some reason something happens. It's usually, she believes, emotionally triggered, which is where I think Karen has a lot of information around, but it is emotionally triggered by something, and the reason why we can't heal it is because we've not gone after the work on what is that trigger. And often it can be something that actually occurred in our childhood that we have put meaning on, which may not even be the truth, but it was a perception of something that occurred when we were younger that then is triggered into something with comfort. Karen, you'd explain it so much better than me. But that was...
No, that makes that. I understand what you're saying. I'm completely and absolutely. The reality is we can develop emotional eating patterns at any point in our life, though. So it doesn't have to be from childhood, but certainly they can often start in childhood, and particularly when we're nurtured and there's a lot more brain neuroplasticity happening in childhood. So, but sorry, I'm trying to just expand on this a little bit, but at the end of the day, it comes back to that dopamine thing too, as well as serotonin. That our brain loves to eat, this beautiful balance of fat and sugar, and it has enhances our serotonin production, which is our mood chemical that makes us feel happier, and it's enhanced when we're eating those types of food. Now, when we eat those types of foods too, our brain also recognises that we feel great. So it produces more dopamine, which means we're more motivated to do it again. Now, we all know when we eat fats and sugars to that quantity, we then have a beautiful sugar low, and we go on this mood roller coaster where we're going up and down. But the dominating force of that dopamine production, that habit formation, plus the serotonin production, means that we want to go back and experience that emotional, that whole full emotional experience when we associate it with eating that food.
Can I ask you a question then on that?
Yeah.
If the body is constantly trying to keep itself in homeostasis, if the body is so resilient and so amazing when you think about all the things that we do to it, why then does the body say that eating fat and sugar together feels so? Why do we release a hormone or a neurotransmitter that says that felt good, even though that's against really constitutionally what the body actually wants or needs?
I wish that I had that answer, because if I did, I reckon I would be able to make huge changes in our health systems around that. And I don't know if there is an answer. I certainly don't know the answer to that.
If we have a look at I put this I put this in my talk in Newcastle, but I do put a lot of things in the talk. But
yeah,
one of the things that we do know is that in the summer we would have eaten a lot of fat, because we would have eaten fat animals or animals that had lots of produce with lots of fat in it, and we would have also eaten sweet fruits. So the natural component of the natural fats and the natural sugars, we needed to eat them in order to put fat on our body to survive a winter.
Yeah.
So that's my belief, is that I feel that fat and sugar was vital for our survival.
Yes, you're right.
We needed it for survival.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to take another tact, if that's okay.
Sure.
In May this year, so after I met you, you went and you ran 2 workshops at the International Conference of Neuropsychotherapy.
Yes.
One of your topics was the neuroscience of sleep. So I'd love to talk to you about the importance of sleep in all of this neuroplasticity that we're talking about, and how do we change, what fires together, wires together. How is sleep helping with that notion?
Sure. I think I just love talking about sleep, by the way, so you may have to cut me off. Or if I say something that doesn't sound right either, please ask for clarification, because I just jump a million miles ahead. But the reality is for a long time now, people have believed that sleep is where we go to rest, that our brain rests and recharges, and not a lot happens. And what we now know, or they've known now for a while, is that actually at times when we're sleeping, our brain is 30% more active than what it is during the day. And there's so many processes that happen at night time that don't happen at all during the day, and it's because of our sleep and our capacity for our brain to restore and repair and grow and adapt is capable because we sleep. And so for us to continue to evolve as human beings, and for us to have evolved as human beings, it has been possible because of our ability to sleep.
That's amazing. So the sleep is part of our evolution.
It's huge. And we all, obviously as human beings, have had to have slept along the way. But I think the most fascinating thing for me is that we are one of the most efficient sleepers. Well, we are the most efficient sleepers that we know of in the animal world. And because of that efficiency, we are capable of, having such amazing brain development and physical capacity. And so I don't know how much you want me to talk about with sleep, but there's lots of different keep going.
Definitely. I want to know more.
Yeah, I really because we have one non-sleeper in the room.
Yeah, and this is hard. Look, I'm going to. It is hard to hear some of the sleep science because it is all geared towards us getting 8 hours of sleep. 7 or 8 hours of sleep is what we believe is the optimal amount of sleep for our optimal brain health. And after that, once we minimise it, we really start seriously affecting our health in so many ways. Now, if I just talk to you about what sleep looks like, it gives you a little bit of insight of what it does. There's when we sleep, there's different stages of sleep. So when we're literally going in to close our eyes, we're dropping into stage 1, then we drop down into stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 non-REM sleep. Now, stage 3 and stage 4 are our deepest sleep that we have. Then after stage 4, we come up into a lighter sleep, which we call rapid eye movement sleep, or most people know as REM sleep, which is our dream state sleep. And that 1, 2, 3, 4 in REM sleep is what we consider one sleep cycle. Now, we should be having 5 of them in a night, hence why, so one of those sleep cycles goes for about 90 minutes. And so we want to have 5 of them ideally in a night. So that gives us about 7 to 8 hours we want to be actually engaged in the sleeping process. Now, the importance of this is, I wish I could give you a little picture in front, but I'll try and describe you this as best as I can. That stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we know as non-REM sleep, it actually dominates the first half of our sleep cycle. So for the first 3 to 4 hours in the night, we're in mostly non-REM sleep, and the second half of the night we're mostly in REM sleep. And the significance of this is that the non-REM sleep helps prune our brain and get rid of the neural pathways and identify what we no longer require as necessary. We just see that we no longer need these systems, and so the brain goes about making sure that it allocates the adaptation and removal and pruning of those systems. And the REM system is about getting the new information and blending it with our old systems of memories. So we start to develop a new world view. So each time we sleep, we're blending the information from the day with what we have already experienced, what we already remember, what we already know. And how that happens is through the state of dreaming. And I can keep talking about this forever. I'm just hoping that I'm not talking out of way. It's too complicated.
No, it's absolutely perfect.
Okay, good. So in the best way that I like to think about this, a really beautiful analogy that an amazing sleep researcher, Matthew Walker, gives, is that he talks about, think about that a big lump of clay has been wheeled in front of you, and the clay represents new and old memories. Now, in order for this big lump of clay to be turned into a sculpture of any kind, we have to start by removing all the excess clay. So we've got to cut off all the big chunks of clay that we know we don't really need. So we do a big culling session and cutting off the excess clay, and then we sort of give some attention to what sort of shape we think this will end up looking like. So if it was a bird, for example, we sort of have an indication of where we need to slow down our culling and where we can take more clay from a different area. The areas that are being culled is like our non-REM sleep. So when we go into non-REM sleep, our brain is identifying, cutting off and culling all that excess debris. And then we go into REM sleep, it's that refining method of refining this model and sculpture. So for the first half of the night, we're doing mostly culling we're doing a little bit of refining. And then as we get to the second half of the night, we no longer need to cull as much. We need to mostly refine this sculpture and make it into that bird that we want it to look like. We're still culling a tiny little bit, but most of our attention is making this bird refined. And so that's our process. Sorry, did I interrupt?
No. I just thought we lost you. You're good.
No. So that's just our, that's how I like to remember the process of sleep. Now, it becomes a little bit trickier because there's different times in those stages of sleep where we have more culling and we have more refinement. For example, in the last 2 hours of our sleep, a lot of our motor memory systems are really refined in that final 2 hours. And for particularly, you can imagine for athletes and just people that are needing to refine motor systems, physical adaptation, physical movement, they often cut off those final 2 hours of sleep because they need to get up early to train, they need to get up early to go to the gym, or they feel like they need to get up early to physically start to move in whatever way, shape or form. And so in that actual fact, they're cutting off the most vital moment where their brain is actually solidifying that motor memory system. So there's little things like that throughout the night that we can affect in so many ways without understanding and knowing what we're doing. And for a lot of people, they think that if they just modify their sleep a little bit by cutting a couple of hours off at the beginning, or particularly at the end by waking up early to go to the gym. You know, I'm an avid gym runner, and if I was to go to bed at 12 o'clock at night, I know that I've given up my opportunity to go for a run in the morning unless I go later in the day, because I know the ramifications of cutting off those final 2 hours. I'm not just cutting off, 20% of my sleep. In actual fact, I'm cutting off, more like 60% of my REM sleep, and I'm severely affecting some of my non-REM sleep. So we can't really just, have that. We can if we want to, but in my mind, it just helps you to be really empowered about the importance of having that dedicated sleep time. And in my passion, it's not about that you have to have 7 or 8 hours sleep, but the important thing is you're giving yourself the opportunity to sleep for 7 or 8 hours, because there's busy people, particularly as a mum of young kids. It's so easy to say, oh, the kids are down now, so I'm going to stay up and have me time, which is something that I hear from mums all the time is, well, the kids are finally down, it's 8 o'clock, so now I've got 3 or 4 hours where I get to do my thing. And so they go into this terrible sleep cycle habit where they stay up late, they get up early, they feel exhausted the next day, which affects their emotional capacity, which we know that REM sleep has a huge influence on our ability to be emotionally resilient, and for our frontal lobes to communicate effectively with the rest of our brain. Our frontal lobes are our reasoning areas, our thinking areas, and without access to that area of our brain and that being in full force, we're really affecting our capacity to make great decisions throughout the day, and hence it affects what we eat, it affects what we do, it affects our relationships, and you can just see how it's a complete flow-on effect then. For the end of the day, feeling lousy, going to bed stressed, and stress has a severe effect on our ability to sleep and go through all these cycles naturally. We might feel like we need a bit of a wine to calm down, which inhibits our REM sleep, and it just goes on and on. But I really believe, I don't think we're educated in sleep as individuals. I think there's a real belief out there that you just put your head on the pillow and it should just happen, and it's not really that important. If you get it, it's great. If you don't worry about it. what you do during the day is much more important. And to me, it's a little bit scary that so much happens, yet we really know nothing about it.
You know, in the next, we've only got 20 minutes left, believe it or not. And in that time, I have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah.
And I think the most important question will probably be the last, which is, we want tips.
Yeah, beautiful.
We're going to want that. But I think the question before that is that, like, I have a 90-year-old father, and he does a lot of sleeping. You know, he sleeps in front of the television, he sleeps in front of the table, his dinner, he sleeps well. He says he never gets up, but I have slept in the same room as him, and he does. He gets up to go to the loo.
Yeah.
Can you briefly talk about, you know, when we're fired up 20 to 40, 50-year-olds, do we still need that 7 to 8 hours sleep? Have we made that in the early parts of our life and at the end of our life? And is it just an average, or do we have to do it now?
I think one of the many misconceptions about sleep out there is that as we age, we need less sleep. I hear that all the time, and that comes from you seeing a lot of older people not sleeping. Excuse me for that. Going to bed early but waking really early, or they just don't sleep as many hours during the night. Now, in order to answer this question, I've just got to vary off for a second. So if I asked you why was I saying this, please remind me where I left off. Yeah. There's 2 other systems that are really important in our sleep. One of them being our circadian rhythm, which you may or may not have heard of, and that's our natural systems within our body that just help indicate and help us to actively go into this state of sleep. So what that means is naturally every day over 24 hours our body systems follow a particular procedure, being one, for example, being our core temperature. So whether we sleep or not, our core temperature will continue to rise up until the early evening, and then it will start to go down, with the purpose that our core temperature is a real key communicator to our sympathetic nervous system to start winding down and having the capacity to go into this restful sleep state. Now, there's a lot of things circadian rhythm dominates is our desire to eat, how much we urinate, when we wake up in the morning, when we feel like going to sleep at night. Now, you would have heard of the chemical melatonin, I imagine, and melatonin is the thing that communicates to our circadian rhythm. So melatonin doesn't act in the So melatonin pulls all of our brain regions together and says, come to the starting line of sleep. This is get ready for the sleep race. Everyone get ready. We're about to go to sleep. Melatonin is literally saying to our brain, it's dark, get ready. But it doesn't then participate in the actual process of sleep. The sleep race is down to the capacity for all of these brain regions to actually do its job, and the body temperature to go down, the sympathetic nervous system to deactivate, and a number of other things to occur. Now, to complicate things, just to highlight that, so our circadian rhythm happens over 24 hours and rises and falls every 24 hours, whether we sleep or we don't sleep. That just happens. Now, there's another system alongside our circadian rhythm that's called our adenosine system. The adenosine is our sleep chemical, and what it does is it starts to be produced from the moment that we wake, and it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until we go to sleep, and it's our sleep urge. So as it builds, the higher it gets, the greater urge we have to sleep. So by the evening, that whole intense urge to go to sleep is a combination of the circadian rhythm systems being activated, but also this adenosine chemical. Now, you can imagine with the elderly, what's happening with their circadian rhythm for you and I, for the average adult. Our circadian rhythm is naturally starting to tick into place around 9 p.m. at night, which means that all of our systems are starting to get ready to go to sleep. Sleep when we're starting to feel that urge to actually lie down and participate in this great sleep race. I'm sorry, ladies, I've got this tickle.
You got some water there?
Yes, just having a gulp.
Yeah, have a gulp. We'll just chat for a while while you have a gulp. So the adenosine, I just wanted to clarify while you're drinking your water.
Yes.
The adenosine system, is that a lot to do with adenosine triphosphate, our energy unit?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. And so so with the circadian rhythm, when we're aging, our circadian rhythm slips back and it mimics more of what it does when we're younger. So we're tired earlier on in the evening. And so you just have to think about a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, how they're tired earlier on and they don't have that capacity even if they want to stay up. They fall asleep on the couch anyway. An elderly person had that same circadian setup. So they're tired early in the evening, but what happens is they don't want to be going to bed at that time. So we're talking about 5:36, they're set to go to bed. And in the early afternoon, their adenosine is building, and this urge to go to sleep is just getting greater and greater. And so they often have this nap. And they have this nap on the couch, and what that does is it resets their adenosine urge and it diminishes. So they no longer have this desire by the time it comes to 5:30, 6 o'clock to go to sleep. So they stay up later and then they engage in, 4 or 5 hours sleep and their circadian rhythm is waking back up again. And so they wake early in the morning. They're not getting a full night's sleep. But what happens is we then have an adenosine debt. So we need 8 hours of sleep during the night, approximately, for the adenosine to diminish and come back down to the place where we need it to start building again for the next day. If our brain hasn't processed all of that adenosine, we wake up with an adenosine debt, and we're tired when we wake up. And we then are starting to accumulate adenosine on top of adenosine. And a lot of people will fix that with caffeine, the good old coffee. Coffee binds to the same receptors as our adenosine. So our adenosine is blocked essentially when we drink caffeine. And we no longer have that ability to feel that urge of sleepiness. But once that caffeine is starting to be lost the word now, taken in, processed, then the receptors are back open again for the adenosine to flood in. Now, the problem being is adenosine never stops. Never stops being produced. So not only do we have adenosine from before we had the cup of coffee, so we already had a debt, we now have all of the adenosine that we had built up whilst the caffeine was covering our receptors. And so we have this huge caffeine crash that we call, and the adenosine floods in.
Okay.
And so with the elderly, sorry, I sidetracked a little bit there. With the elderly, what you find is they tend to just have this repetitive pattern of not sleeping well at night time, but feeling really tired throughout the day. And so it's not that they don't need they don't need the 8 hours sleep. It's generally that they're not capable of getting a full night's sleep, not only because of their circadian rhythm and adenosine systems, but also the rest of the systems such as their bladder control and other things that happen in old age that affect their capacity to stay asleep.
I have so many questions for you, Davinia, because I'm like going through motherhood and all of these things, but we're coming to a close, and I really think it would be lovely if you give us some tips on, what do you do for someone who's a bad sleeper? And so Kimmy's a bad sleeper. We're back to Kimmy again.
Yeah.
Listen, when we say bad sleeper, I just have 6 hours. I'm depriving myself of the other 2, obviously, the most important 2. But I've tried. I can't tell you the last time I had an 8-hour sleep.
And I mean, there's lots of things that could be happening. The reality is that there's not many of us. There's a very, very small percentage, and some sleep scientists say the percentage is so small that if you round it to the nearest number, it'd be 0, that require less than 7 to 8 hours of sleep. It's just that we set up. Sorry, that's harsh, I know.
The interesting thing is Cindy and Karen, we can say the word sleep and they're nearly gone.
Yeah, how beautiful. I'm not like
gone
that
for 10 hours.
Yeah. I don't say this with the fact that I'm an awesome sleeper. I'm not an awesome sleeper. I have to set up my habits for sleeping. And, those habits are making sure that I don't have caffeine after 11 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock preferably. I wouldn't have any more than 2 cups at a maximum. That I'm exercising earlier on in the day, not late in the day. And for the reason for that being that we want our sympathetic nervous system to be turned down, so our stress response, we don't want our body to be any heightened protective response. We want it to be calm and relaxed. And so it's better to be exercising earlier on, or at least no later than 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. It's more important that we're getting up in the morning at a set regular time than it is to be going to bed at a regular time. So it really starts with setting up this circadian rhythm, starts with getting up at a particular set time in the morning, so that then you have the capacity for your systems and your brain to slowly adapt over time to build this urge to sleep in the evening. And look, none of this is easy. I think it's fascinating that sleep is one of those things that we can't just decide to do and it will happen. It doesn't matter how much willpower or how much we talk to ourselves or how much we know it's helpful. It doesn't change our ability and our capacity to engage in sleep. So it's about just setting up the most amount of habits that we can to be supportive, and one of them being allowing yourself at least, I say if you want 8 hours of sleep, you should be giving yourself at least 8.5 hours time in bed. If you're a bad sleeper, then maybe a little bit more, and just setting up some systems to get into that restful state as you're lying horizontally before you close your eyes and actually want to engage in that process. Some other things, sorry.
I think what's amazing is, we live in Queensland and we don't have daylight savings. And so the sunlight comes up at 4:30 in the summer, and then it doesn't come up till after 6:30 in the winter. And I find it fascinating because in the summer I'm always awake at 4:30, but in the winter I barely make 6 a.m. It's like 6:10, and I want to be in the water at 6:30. So I don't set an alarm though. I find my body is so used to that's the time you get up. You don't have to set an alarm. Even last night, and I realised why I didn't sleep last night, because I had coffee late. And I was thinking, why can't I get to sleep? Usually I hit the pillow, I'm gone, that's it. But last night I realised when you said after 11, well, I had my last coffee at 12:30, and I usually only have one. So thank you for that habit hint.
That's what you're welcome. Yeah. And the other thing with sunlight, although sunlight isn't our only thing that sets our circadian rhythm to reset each day, it's one of the key indicators that sort of reminds our brain and resets that circadian clock, so that in that evening time we really do have those systems set up ready to turn off and go into that slumber. So given that the sunlight comes up earlier, it really sets that clock to be feeling sleepier earlier in the evening.
Kim, so Davinia, what are your rituals? You mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you actually have trained yourself to do rituals. What do they look like? Really,
it's about, I don't go to bed until I'm tired. So your bedroom really should just be about having being sleep. You can read in your bed, but I wouldn't do anything else. And you can have your passionate time with your partner in your bedroom, but you can't have you shouldn't be doing anything else to invigorating in there, purely for allowing your brain to associate that area with sleep. And so when we walk into our bedroom, we're setting up that habit that our brain is really identifying, associating, oh, I get to calm down now, I get to lie down and participate in this sleep process. So I really try and stay down in my lounge room until I'm ready to go up and read a few pages of my book before I turn on my light. I really make sure I don't exercise after 5 p.m. at night time, and ideally I exercise in the morning. Really trying to get some sunlight in the morning when I wake up and go outside and do some grounding tasks, and really, just getting in touch with our natural surroundings and things like that. I really try to avoid alcohol at night time for most days of the week, and just allow myself a couple of days on the weekend to have that social time. Avoiding large meals at night time. I try not to have too big a meal because it can set my systems up to be really struggling to process all of that food as I'm going to sleep. And I try not to nap during the day, but given sometimes we just need a nap, and as long as I nap before 3 p.m, then we're okay.
Actually, I find that interesting about the napping, because if I nap, I'm up all night.
Yeah, and that adenosine's being, burnt down, and so you don't have that urge anymore. And for some people, they're more receptive. Their system of burning that adenosine is different. It's just, same with caffeine. We all are able to have different enzymes to be able to break that caffeine down in a different way. Some of us are more sensitive than others, and it's just understanding what it looks like for you.
Yeah.
Davinia, question super quick.
Yeah.
We've spoken about Kimmy. I just, so just on that. Now, for all the mothers out there, yes, I do get that you'll probably hate me after this, but just it's just personal. So I'm in bed by 8:15, religiously every night, even when I go out partying.
She leaves early.
I'll leave.
You're like me.
In the afternoon so that Kaz can come.
But I'm a shot duck by 8:30, so I'm in bed, and then I wake up, somewhere between sort of, 7 to 8 o'clock in the winter time, and in the summertime, anywhere between 6 and 7, and I'm out like a light the most of the night. And then occasionally, like if I have a really strenuous day, I'll head for a nap. But then I'll go to bed at 8:30 and I'll sleep like a baby again.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's the thing, we're all...
She's spending not a third of her life asleep, and half of it.
Pretty much.
And that's great. I say the more sleep you get, the better. There's no research to say that there's too much sleep is detrimental, but obviously it becomes so much that you're not engaging in life and meeting people and making relationships and experiencing new things, and that's detrimental. But if it allows you to live a rich and fulfilled life at the same time, I say go for it.
Okay then. All right. Well, I just want to make sure that there wasn't too much sleep.
And you should see her. She doesn't have a wrinkle on her face.
Wrinkle on her face. And exhausted, dried skin, and detox. So do you use anything in particular? Do you suggest supplementing with something like melatonin? Or adding?
No, I don't suggest supplementing with melatonin for most people. Melatonin can be helpful when you're traveling. It can help you sort of reset your brain's ability to catch up with the new time zone. But even then, it still doesn't necessarily put you into sleep, but it can just help convince your brain, so to speak, that it's time to go to bed. But it really takes an hour. Each day your circadian rhythm can reset by an hour. So each time you're in a different time zone, it's still going to take time for you to readjust and not have that jet lag. So no, I don't. But look, there's lots of people that do. That's just my opinion. I don't think one of the biggest placebo effects is melatonin, that people take melatonin and they believe it's going to work, and it does work purely from a cognitive level rather than it actually doing anything. So if you do take it and it helps, I don't know of any side effects or negativity to taking melatonin, but I've always been told by a neuroscientist that there's no free meals, and he means that whatever you put into your system will have an effect in some way, shape or form, and so keeping it as natural as possible is obviously the ideal scenario. I just think if you can keep it to behavioural tips, then to me that's the way to go. But keep in mind that I don't have severe sleep issues, so some people are just really needing to hold on to the belief that something will help them, and if it does, then that is good.
And Dr. Libby was talking lots about the fact that heat can be a thing that wakes us up in the night. Yeah. So for a lot of women in particular that are menopausal or postmenopausal, they can still struggle with the heat, which then she brought back to the fact that the liver is not detoxifying properly because the estrogen that's being created it's been absorbed back into the blood, and that's causing the heat surge. So would you look at other things as well alongside of maybe exhaustion or being a mum or whatever? There could be other factors, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And heat is definitely one of them. Having your body core temperature, assisting it to stay cool is a really valuable thing you can do. You can buy cool mats that you can sleep on, or just keeping a fan on in your room, not having too many covers in your bed. But obviously with menopause, that heat is going to fluctuate. But it's really just trying to be a bit curious about your sleep, and rather than feeling like you're defeated, to really just take this curious approach of, well, how can I really just try and discover more about what it's like for me? And if I adapt something, how does that work? And if that doesn't work, I try another thing. What works for one won't work for everybody. But it's trying to take some of the fear away from sleep, because whilst we're fearful and worried about going to bed, we're really stopping our brain from being able to turn off. And so that can often just be the very first point, is just being able to find some capacity to meditate or be mindful, or just have a hot bath and relax and just sit with the people that we love and have a conversation rather than being on a device. So it can be as simple as just allowing yourself time to investigate.
Davinia, you have been a wealth of knowledge and information, and I think also inspiration.
Oh, thank you, ladies. That's lovely.
No, you really have. You've given us so much food for thought, and I think in some cases...
Sleep for thought.
Oh, sleep for thought. But I think there's going to...
Karen slept the whole way through it.
Good on you. I support that. So, actually, it's after 3 o'clock. No.
It's my nap time.
Oh, we've all lost it. Kim does that to us, Davinia, all the time. She just makes a comment and we lose it.
That's
the end of it.
I love it.
Laughter is very good for sleeping as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Laughter's good for everything.
Yeah. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
It has been. It's been really, really insightful. And I think part of what I'm loving about today's podcast, and we kind of start where we end and top and tail, in that, when it comes to the neurological aspect of the health of the body, to think that the two are separate is a little bit I think it's a little self-destructive. Whereas if we're able to link the mind and the body, and then of course, the next conversation could potentially be the soul. But I think if we can link the mind and the body together, what you're talking about here today is that even the way that we set ourselves up to sleep, the way that we set ourselves up to eat, we can really bring the mind into and our thought systems into taking greater control over our behavior and our choices. So thank you for all of your tips, and thank you for all of your insights. It's been absolutely awesome.
Well, thank you for having me, ladies. It's just been a pleasure just talking about what I love and just having you lead the way with some really interesting questions. So I hope I answered them adequately.
Oh, you were amazing. Now, before we go, Davinia, is there any way that our listeners can reach out to you if they want to follow you or find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to contact me is by email, and my email is, do you want me to tell you my email?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So it's Davinia, DAVINIA, at iExceed, which is iExceed.com.au. So my business is called iExceed, and you can find me on Facebook as iExceed.com.au, and I post and I'm on Instagram as well, but I like to just post a lot of tips and tricks and health things and stories. I love just telling stories and just teaching people through insights about my life and what I've learned, and putting some education in there as well. So hopefully that it might help people just from some of the things I put on there.
And is that your name? That is the Instagram?
Instagram is iExceedRC, actually.
Oh, we're looking it up. You should see it. iExceedRC is my Instagram. There it is. Yeah.
Gotcha.
We found her.
Yeah, beautiful.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
We're all following.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, ladies.
Well, Davinia, thank you so, so very much. And I hope that our listeners have absolutely loved today's podcast show. Thank you for being a part of it with us.
Thank you.
So for all of our listeners, head on over to our Facebook page at allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat, and you can post your comments and your questions there. Also, you can post your comments and your questions at allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up-for-a-chat. So join us here next week on Up for a Chat and become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. We're going to see you on the hike.
This year, the Wellness Summit returns.
The only lesson is ever going to be your learning. That's it. As long as you're learning, that's your lesson. When you stand in front of the mirror, the talk, the things that go on between these ears in the morning can also be what sets you up for a day. And if you've beaten yourself up for not being the most extraordinary person that you can be, then start now. We make it hard for ourselves. We make things difficult for ourselves because we go and apply a whole bunch of stories and a whole bunch of drama and a whole bunch of I'm not good enoughs to the things that occur in our lives. Wake the heck up. Today's a new day. And here's where it can change.
Kim Morrison and Karen Smith feature at the 2018 Wellness Summit. Bigger and better than ever. Tickets on sale Friday, May 4 at thewellnesssummit.com.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.